have with us in the studio for the first segment and all of our second segment, Bruce K. Alexander. Bruce is the president and CEO of Vectra Bank, Colorado. And you reminded me, David, that our Business Unconventional production company banks at Vectra Bank. So I want to talk to you about the service I've been getting, Bruce. No, I'm teasing you. Welcome to Business Unconventional.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your business.
Well, hey, we were happy with it. So
we're paying the bills.
Yes, we are. So really the excuse for having you in here, and it's a very good excuse, I might say, is you guys are coming up in just a few days on January 30th with your 20th annual economic forecast breakfast. And you do it in two ways. There are people who, by invitation, can come to the physical breakfast itself. You've got a stellar lineup of individuals who will be participating as speakers, and we'll go through who they are. But there's also a webcast available, and really anybody listening to this program who has an interest can plug into that webcast on January 30th. Again, we will tell you details of exactly what you need to do that. But Bruce, you've been with the bank, since 2000?
Since 2000.
So this will be your 12th breakfast?
Uh-huh.
Okay, and tell us a little bit about the breakfast. What happens here, and how accurate is it?
I got invited to the breakfast.
I didn't.
You can both come. All three.
Oh, thank you. You have to be. You have to have potential, and that's why you got invited.
It's really an exciting an event, and we have been doing it for 20 years as a company, and each year it gets better. And the logic is that we're all in this together, small business, conventional or unconventional, and the key is to be armed with enough information to be able to run your business well. And if you think especially about the last 3 years and how difficult the economy has been and how many people had to reinvent their business just to survive, we believe this kind of information is really important. And as a bank, we create that kind of partnership with people. So we really try to add value by providing meaningful information to help people run their business and anticipate kind of what's coming down the road.
Yeah, I am part of a consortium of agents throughout the United States that do Bank on Yourself, and we had an economist come at our conference, and it was exactly what we had thought would happen. So we can talk about that, but
we're going to.
It's a good idea to let people know that the end isn't near; it's here.
You do more with this. So the 20th annual economic forecast breakfast. Again, it's going to be January 30th. It's really not just a Vectra Bank event. You actually are bringing in people too. It looks to me like from out of state. Mark Sneed is an economist and president of Region Track Inc. He's coming in from Oklahoma City. They are an economic research firm. They specialize in economic forecasting and analysis. Also from out of state, George Feiger, who is Chief Executive Officer of Contango Capital Advisors. That's Contango, C-O-N-T-A-N-G-O. Like if it was Spanish, it's like with the tango. Contango Capital Advisors, based in San Francisco. And he's also I guess it's a sibling, it's part of Zions Bancorp, and Vectra Bank of Colorado, of course, is part of Zions Bancorp as well.
Correct. And what's interesting, I think, quickly about these the speakers that we have, the first speaker is Debbie Silverstein. She is with a local economic group, and she will talk about the Colorado economy, what's driving the Colorado economy.
Small businesses driving.
Yeah.
Small businesses driving the Colorado economy.
And she's going to tell you how to succeed and what the tailwinds and what the opportunities are. Mark Sneed, while he is from Oklahoma City, he used to be the head of the Federal Reserve Office of Kansas City here in Denver. I sat on that board for 6 years and had the opportunity to work with him. And he is going to give us a real good insight into not only the U.S. economy, what's happening with the fiscal cliff, but also what's happening in Europe and other countries and how that might impact us. And then George Feiger with Contango Capital Advisors is going to give a much more global view of the issues that will drive investing in small business and the economy in general. So we really think it's going to be a nicely balanced program that will really add value to anybody in what they're doing.
Well, in the second segment of this week's show, we are going to, Bruce, roll up our sleeves and talk to you much more about the economy and how this type of a function, how this type of an event can actually help business owners prepare for 2013. We want to do that. We want to talk about your time on the Federal Reserve Bank of Kansas City. You certainly are the first. Were you therefore a Fed governor, or were you a director? Was there a difference?
Yes, I was a director. The Fed governors are back in Washington.
Okay, so you
Those
were
are political appointees.
All right, well, so you were a director, but you're our first director on the program. I do want to tell people, because I think they will be anxious to get this information. So it's the Vectra Bank Colorado 20th Economic Forecast Breakfast. It is January 30th, so it's coming up this week. It runs from, it's going to be streamed over the internet if you're not there in person at www.vectrabank.com/webcast.jsp. I'm going to go through that slowly. www.vectrabank.com. That's V like Victor, ECTRA Bank, BANK.com. Then /webcast.jsp. You should go there ahead of time. You should pre-register, get some more information. You can get complete bios, which we can't give
It's
out.
free.
It's free on the radio.
That's
the
right.
breakfast itself is different, but the webcast is free. Again, you'll have bios there of Mark Sneed, Patricia Silverstein, Stein or Steen?
Steen.
Patricia Silverstein and George Feiger, all of whom are going to be participating. Do you participate on the panel?
Absolutely. I'm the co-host of it, and we'll lead the
Wonderful.
questioning at the end.
Okay,
And
so
when
what are
we
you going
come
to say?
back-
We want like the
We're going to
inside
get
scoop.
this. We got to go to break.
I know.
When we come back,
Stay tuned.
we're going to have Jeff Wilson, our regular contributor, join us. He knows a lot about the economy. But don't go anyplace. This is Business Unconventional. I'm Dean Rotbart.
I'm David Biondo.
We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Economic Forecast Breakfast Edition of Business Unconventional.
You got your coffee?
Are you having breakfast this morning?
Of course.
We're actually getting a preview, and we're really, really lucky because we do get previews of the Vectra Bank Colorado 20th Annual Economic Forecast Breakfast. It's coming up January 30th this week. David, you may be there live in the audience, but everybody who's listening can be there live streaming on the internet. The stream goes from 7:30 in the morning to 9 o'clock. There is a great lineup of people. We are pleased and honored to have with us truly in the studio today Bruce K. Alexander. He's president and CEO of Vectra Bank Colorado. Bruce, this is your party. You're the co-host of this party. Give us a little sense as to people who are going to invest the hour and a half to listen, what they can expect.
Well, we think it's going to be a real value add for small businesses, consumers, investors, or whatever, because we're really going to cover a broad array of information. We're going to talk about the Colorado economy. We're going to give some people insight to what we think is going to happen, what our economist thinks is going to happen going forward, and how that might impact somebody's business strategy during the year. We're also going to talk about the national economy and what's happening with job growth. What does the fiscal cliff mean? What's Congress going to do? What's the Federal Reserve going to do relative to monetary policy? All those things can have an influence on, does a company expand? Do they contract? Do they need to find different businesses, niches to grow in? So we think there's going to be a lot of really substantive information for our guests.
They need to listen to Business Unconventional.
They need to
exactly
listen. Jeff,
right.
we're going to let me introduce to you, Bruce. I know you have met him previously, but this is Jeff Wilson. Jeff Wilson is the CEO of a company called LoomView, which if you don't know about, I'll tell you about after we're off air, but basically they help small businesses transform their basically boring bookkeeping function into business intelligence. And really what you're going to be doing with the annual economic forecast is providing people business intelligence, and that's great. Jeff, you are a Wharton graduate. You have worked with literally several hundred businesses and coaching them. You've been involved with Action Coach. And we asked you to make sure you were here this week because we figured you had some questions that maybe would represent some of the business owners that you know well and what they would want to know from Bruce in his three hats. Hat number one, president and CEO of Vectra Bank Colorado. Hat number two, just stepped aside after 6 years as being a director of the Federal Reserve Bank of Kansas City. And hat number three, as the co-host and participant in the 20th Annual Economic Forecast Breakfast. So, Jeff?
Great. Yeah, Bruce, one of the questions that I think that every business owner asks is, what can my bank do for me? We hear that money is available, that rates are affordable, but there seems to be, among small businesses, no one will give me money. So what would you say to small businesses, because this is a great opportunity to speak to them and let them know what they need to be prepared so that they can, because that's how you make money, is by lending money, but you don't make money if you lend money to people who spend it and don't invest it
Right.
in their business. So what is it that you look for? What would you be saying to business owners?
Well, I'd make two general comments. I think, first of all, a bank needs to be a partner with a small business because we're in it together. We're their capital source. We're giving them senior debt to help invest and grow in their business. And much like what you do, we have to be a business coach. And so when we sit down with a client, we'll ask them about their business strategy. We'll ask them about their growth plans. We'll make sure that they don't grow too fast or too slow. We'll help provide them access to capital. We'll help validate their business model. So it's a lot more than just making a loan, as you know, being a business coach yourself. And so we try to partner with their accountants and their attorneys to help them develop a meaningful plan. And we'll ask them to create pro formas or financial projections to say what happens if things are as you expect, but what happens if they're 20% worse or 20% better, and are you really prepared to grow? I think the second thing that's worth focusing on is that the various kinds of capital or financing that is available to companies today. It's one of the big issues that happens all the time. Why aren't banks making loans? Banks typically don't make loans to startup enterprises. That's a higher risk kind of capital, and typically that's more like equity. Oftentimes there are other organizations like community development financial institutions who can provide capital to startup enterprises. We'll also make available loans through the SBA where they're guaranteed by the government for early stage companies that need a different kind of capital. Banks typically finance those operating companies that have been in business for a period of time and really help them grow. So I think two observations. One, a bank ought to be a partner to add value, to provide information like we're doing in this economic forum. And then secondly, really educate people about what forms of capital are out there and where they should go to get it. I'll make one quick thing. I'm also, a fourth hat, I guess, is I'm chairman of the board of the Colorado Bankers Association this year, and the CBA has a website called smallbusinesslending.org, and in there it details in some significant detail the kinds of opportunities and how you access capital, and I would encourage your listeners to go to that. It's a great way to find unconventional capital to help them grow at an early stage.
That's a great resource. Is there someone either on your team who people can contact, or is there a division within your
Vectra Bank Colorado?
That they can reach out to?
They can go to our website. Many of our officers and lenders are identified there. So if it's a geographic issue, we have 40 offices across the state. So depending on where somebody is domiciled, we also look at those people who need real estate lending versus those people who have small businesses versus large operating businesses, and we have various levels of experience and expertise. So I think going to the website and kind of identifying, or simply calling our offices, we'd be happy to send them in the right direction, and all that information is on our website.
Bruce, let's just make sure, first of all, the website is it just vectrabank.com? Okay,
yes.
Vectra Bank, and again, to spell that for people, V like Victor, E Edward, C Charles, T Tom, R Robert, A Apple, Vectra Bank. I'm a former reporter for the Wall Street Journal. I used to cover economists all the time. They do surveys of economists. You got 100 economists in the room, you have 125 opinions
That's true.
as to what's going to happen. How did you end up sort of selecting the people on this, and what are you looking for from them in terms of, am I supposed to come away from this breakfast with what I think is a consensus forecast, or am I supposed to come away understanding maybe the economy better and how it impacts me? Do we check back with you in a year? I'm asking rapid fire questions. Do we check back with you in a year and say, was the forecast accurate, or that's not the point?
It's really about providing information to small and middle-sized businesses and investors about what might be ahead, what they need to do to prepare for that so that they can maximize their return on investment. You know, so many times you hear economists and they talk in these big glowing terms about M1 and M2, and it doesn't have any relevance at all to you or your business. What we try to do is put it in practical terms about why is the economy growing, where is it growing, where is it receding, what are the external factors that might impact your business. So it's much more practical, it's hands-on, it's meaningful. For example, we'll talk about the oil and gas economy. You say, well, that's interesting by itself, but the real question is, what impact does that have on your business? If gas prices are going to go up 20% and you're a trucker and your distribution costs go up 20%, are you prepared for that? Or what happens if certain countries in Europe have economic problems and you're shipping and exporting to those countries? Are you prepared if there's a dramatic downturn in those economies? So we give you some insight insights into what's happening into countries like that. So it's the reason I like it, and the reason we've been doing it for 20 years is it's hands-on, valuable information about what's happening today, but also what's happening in the future. And as you know very well, it's about anticipating the future and retooling your company regularly to deal with the vagaries of the economy and changes that are ahead of all of us.
Well, this is something that even it doesn't have to be an international business, but even a small business can benefit from attending and the information they'll get there.
Absolutely, and I'll tell you kind of a cute story. We have a company that sells junk. They take stuff from old construction site, copper and cement and various things like this. They package it up and they sell it to China. They export this stuff, and it's a little tiny small business. Wasn't very sophisticated when it started, but because they got insights into what was happening in the Chinese economy and how it was growing, they were able to quadruple their business. It wasn't just because of our event, but access to this kind of information works across the board.
It's information what it's all about.
Absolutely.
One of the things that small business has been complaining about is 50% loan to value for commercial enterprises that want to expand. And, looking at the economic forecast, that doesn't look like it's going to change too much. You want to comment on that?
I would, and it's interesting. It's a great question because a lot of what's happening today and a lot of the constraints that are out there are really a function of what happened in September of 2008 when the economy went upside down. Many banks were too aggressive in real estate lending, many other capital sources were too aggressive, and the economy got too far ahead of itself. The regulators now have come in and really squashed back what banks can do. And so a lot of this is driven by an overly aggressive regulatory environment. Clearly we needed some change, we needed some improvement based upon what happened in September of 2008. But underwriting will be more difficult for a period of time, and I would encourage people to watch what's going to happen coming out of this Dodd-Frank legislation that was passed a couple of years ago, and now the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which is writing all kinds of new rules. It will probably get more difficult, especially in the mortgage arena, for a period of time before it gets better.
And credit default swaps and, all these derivatives probably shouldn't have been on the table.
They are a necessary product. It's just that they weren't regulated, they weren't monitored, they weren't quantified in a way that could really identify the level of risk across the global economy. They are necessary risk mitigation tools. It's just that nobody was paying attention to them and they got way out of hand.
One last little question here.
Yeah.
Do you think that we will get downgraded?
U.S.?
As U.S. government bonds?
I think the single biggest issue on the table right now is the U.S. debt and the U.S. deficit, and absolutely something has to happen. And if they don't do something, the fiscal policy experts in Washington, I think there is a chance that it could be downgraded again. We avoided it when we got past the fiscal cliff, but the fact is the U.S. is spending more money than it has. It's not managing its expense budget, if you will, and that's just not sustainable over a period of time. And so the single biggest issue right now is finding that solution to the debt and deficit problem.
Hey, you heard it here first on Business Unconventional.
Jeff, you have a short question? We're running down
Bruce,
the clock.
that's so on point because in talking to so many small business owners, what they say is no one is spending right now because they had the fiscal cliff, now we have the debt cliff, we have tax cliff, all these concerns. What would you say to them is something that they need to keep their eye on the ball and not get distracted by all this news cycle, but what can they do to move their business forward?
It's an important question because I do think what happens, everybody gets nervous about all this press on the debt and deficit. I think they need to look at their own operating business. If they don't invest in their business going forward, it's likely to create a problem. They don't want to invest if the market opportunity isn't there. They probably need a good business coach to really make it work. But I think that the real issue is look at their own business, look at the operations in front of them, determine if some of these third-party factors could influence them. But those third-party factors, the government isn't on its own going to stop this from moving forward.
We need to go to the news. Hopefully it'll be good economic news. We encourage people to sign up in advance for the webcast if you're not going to already be in person at the breakfast. Again, it's January 30th, vectrabank.com/webcast.jsp as in Jack, Sam, Peter. We certainly want to thank Bruce Alexander, who's president and CEO of Vectra Bank, Colorado, for being
Be there
with
or
us.
be square.
Be unconventional. Bruce, we would actually love to have you back. I think we need more time with you to talk about Vectra Bank and what it can do for small business. This is the year
I want to yank
of
on his
small
ear.
business
I want
driving
to
Colorado.
yank on his ear a little more.
You want to yank on his ear?
Bruce, businesses need to know how to work with their banks.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. We hear that all the time. And I think what you guys are doing on this kind of programming is so valuable. People need access to this information and various parties. So I'd be delighted to come back.
You consider yourself invited. We'll be back after the
Right.
news. Thank you.